Welcome to the Mindful Healers podcast with Dr. Jessie Mahoney.
And Dr. Ni-Cheng Liang.
We are physicians and leaders who are also trained in coaching, yoga, mindfulness, and integrative medicine.
We are also mothers, spouses, sisters, daughters, aunts, and friends.
In this podcast, we share candid, heart-centered, loving, science-based, thoughtful, and often fun conversations about the challenges life throws at us.
With our collective experience of over 30 years in physician and personal wellness, we reflect and offer pearls of wisdom for navigating life's challenges with more ease.
From parenting, marriages, money scarcity, cancer survivorship, uncertainty, challenges in practicing medicine, we cover it all.
We invite you to refresh your perspective and empower yourself with mindset, mindfulness, and other well-being tools that actually work. A quick reminder that nothing in our podcast is medical advice.
Welcome to today's episode. And today I have Hilary Blair joining me to talk about why doctors struggle with public speaking. Do you want to improve your impact, presence, calm, and groundedness as a speaker? Do you struggle when you get up on stage? So, our intention today is to have a fun conversation about how you can improve your public speaking if you want and show up more artfully and authentically, and a bit about why presence is a secret ingredient and why it's hard for us specifically as physicians and people in healthcare to give an inspiring, fun, authentic, off the cuff talk. So I invited Hilary to join me today. We are, as I consider it, old friends. We met at Brave Enough many years ago. I'm not sure exactly which one. I have been to several of the Brave Enough conferences, and Hilary at that time was a regular speaker. You came several times and spoke to us there about using your voice and acting. And I will say, actually, I was always hesitant to go to your sessions because I don't consider myself an actress. And doing all this voice stuff, which is very funny because now I've actually, do a lot of singing bowl work, and I, in teaching yoga, use my voice all the time, but it was not a part of myself I had connected to when I first met you. But
Yeah.
apparently I knew that, in that we became friends and we have continued to connect. And
Yes.
early on, you helped us with this podcast as we were starting. And then I continued to meet you at the Canadian Women in Medicine Conference and lots of other places. So when I was looking for someone to help me with the talks that I was getting asked to give more and more talks, and I thought, I really want to be more confident. I want to show up. And how I came to you was I want to show up as a speaker as naturally as I do as a yoga teacher. And I wasn't quite sure how to make that step so that I could show up authentically and in my body, confident, calm, and really sharing authentically my message. And so I reached out to your company because I knew you had this company to help people give more effective talks and communicate, as you like to say, artfully. And now I have finished a round of coaching and found it really helpful. And I have a plot actually to do another one because I have some new projects that I want to work on, but more about that later. I wanted to have you come on at this point to talk about what you know about us doctors and our tendencies, and what a few tips for us about what we can do to speak more artfully, mindfully, presently, and all of those things that I love. So would you just start by introducing yourself?
Yeah. I am a drama teacher who for years put the drama in and now take the drama out in a way. And I am committed to people's voices being heard and for them to show up authentically. And as you pointed out, right, when you first met me, you thought, oh, the acting, I don't want to do that acting or what I would call schmacting, which is schmaltzy acting, because acting is actually about being real in the moment. There's an intentionality about removing the walls, dropping the curtain, being really in relationship, which is what presence is. So our journey with Articulate on helping people, encouraging people to have executive presence, leadership presence, professional presence, stage presence is to figure out how to drop the wall so we're in relationship, we're in dialogue, we are present with each other, and authentically so. And you asked that question about what do physicians, what do doctors, right? What are they struggling with? And they're struggling with people like me who are asking them to have all the answers for everything. So if I want you to have all the answers and all the right answers for everything and to reassure me, it tends to send people to their heads, right? So we, for lack of a better sort of description, we divide people into three. We have our head, our heart, and our gut or our instinct, right? And we have other elements as well, but those three main. And most of us are moving in and out of all three of those all the time. And our work worlds tend to invite us to only send our head in, especially in the virtual world. It's like, I'm just going to have my head. That's all. And I'm going to keep my heart.
In a box.
Yes, right? Yeah. It's totally in a box. And so if we are working with folks, we are really figuring out where's your instinct come in, where does your heart come in? And most physicians that I work with, and we do work with quite a few physicians, right, is to remind them or just sometimes I feel like I'm an operator connecting, right? Old-fashioned operator, like connecting, boom, boom. So I'm just connecting physicians back to parts of themselves that they kind of disconnected from or moved aside because of the professional world. So connecting you back to the heart, connecting you back to your instinct. So I completely and totally understand why physicians end up coming with their head and having that sort of dry, here's what I have to share, because they're being challenged and there's the science behind it and we want to be professional and there are all these elements. We don't want to get rid of any of that. We want to layer into that your heart and your instinct.
Yeah, I love that. And what struck me, and I hadn't even thought about this before we had this conversation, is this idea of presence, right? I run Pause and Presence. And here we're talking about mindfulness and presence. And the acting version of presence is sort of being in the moment. But really, it's about being completely present in your body. And I think that's one of the things that I really learned was to show up not at all in your head. I do my best work from my heart. So like if I can just show up with my hand to heart and really even practicing that with the audience so that I'm doing that from the outset, then while I'm sharing with them a tool, I'm also getting back into my own body. And I think I had a vision of, when you're on stage, you're really sending it outward. And what I learned so much is actually if you bring it inward so that you are present and connected to all of you, that's the most powerful speaker. And almost it doesn't, the audience is out there and you're paying attention, but if you're really in your body, you'll give an amazing talk.
Yeah, I want to connect two of those thoughts where my brain went is thinking about we want to be in touch with our whole body and what's going on with us, right? We want that sense. We also want to be focused on what we're giving and committed to the audience. So there is about the relationship because nerves tend to happen when we become, we're nervous. We should be nervous. We care about connecting, right? But we get overwhelmed by them and become self-conscious when we are worried about only ourselves and how are they looking at me? And I start getting self-involved, self-conscious, and a wall goes up. So there is a sense of being aware of the audience. What am I going to give to the audience? What am I sharing with them? In a beautiful dance with what you mentioned, which is being self-aware and in my body, right? And that sense of being embodied. We use that term. And I think it's interesting as performers, we use being embodied as physically being in our body. There's also the sense of embodying values and that whole thing. So it's interesting that those are one's almost a heady version of being embodied, and one is like really being in the body. And how can we connect those? That physical warm up before you speak is because the physical and vocal warm up is because we really do need to be embodied so that we are aware of what's going on. And I love that. And I know working with Diana, you were working on that. She's an amazing coach and actor, right? So that sense of how do we bring that? And what I was also interested in is the sense of remembering it's about them. So it's about my relationship
Yeah.
right now, right? I can get all self-conscious. I got a microphone on, how, it's, what's happening? How am I looking? What's happening? And then mostly if I think, what's my relationship to you? But we're virtual, right? So in order to feel like I'm connecting to you, for you to feel like I'm connecting to you, I have to look at a camera, right? So that is not very organic for me because I want to look over here at you,
Yeah.
right? So I want to look. So that sense of there are disconnects for what really has us connect. And being intentional about that is important.
What's so interesting is one, this idea, I think that we can't connect with others if we're not in our own body. And when we are
Totally.
too nervous and we're getting up there thinking this is some special thing and everyone's looking at me, in medicine,
Yeah.
we're very concerned about what other people will think. And will
Yes.
they think I'm an idiot? And what if I don't know? And et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
But when we are in our own body, and I actually had this experience of giving a big talk right after teaching yoga at a conference. And
Yeah.
I originally, after I finished the yoga class, I thought, why did I do this to myself? Now I have to go change my clothes and come right back down. It was the best talk I've ever given because I was so relaxed. And there
Yes.
were many people out in the beginning, the front row of the audience who I'd just been upside down with. And so I really had that like deep personal connection with them.
Yeah.
But it strikes me what you just said, that and I've not done this as a speaker, but I'm going to, that we are very good at this as physicians, connecting with people and
Yeah.
dropping in immediately in the exam room. And we're
Yes.
there to meet that person. And it's almost like giving a talk is the same thing. And when
Yes.
we first learned, like med students who go on the exam room, you're so uncomfortable. You don't know how to connect. You don't know what you're doing. And you have all this imposter syndrome.
Yeah.
And now you walk into a room and it's like, you just have a conversation and you're immediately connected. And giving a talk is actually like that because you're sharing, you're giving this information really heart-centered, you're caring. And
Yeah.
if we could shift our mindset to really think like, oh, I'm just in the exam room and I'm helping these people just like I'm
Yeah.
helping someone in the exam room, that would be an incredibly powerful mindset switch.
Yes. Right. Yes. And thinking they're not looking at your code and where your
Yes.
name is. They're not, they're listening to what you
Yeah.
have to
Yeah.
share and in relationship. Yes. And we have a phrase for that awkward,
Yeah.
that awkward sense, right? Of own the awkward,
Mhm.
rock the
Mhm.
awkward, because we do tend to confuse, most of us, not everyone, we tend to confuse confidence and comfort. And too
Mhm.
often we will be in a situation and say, oh, I lost my confidence. And we will ask, really? Or did you just get uncomfortable? Because many times we're simply lacking comfort because it's an uncomfortable situation. We're trying to find the answer, something's going on with someone, whether it's a big audience, whether it's one on one. We are owning the awkward versus giving up our confidence. And that has been, granted, there are many times when we also lose our confidence.
Yeah.
There are fewer times than many of us use the words for. So if we can say, I'm owning the awkward. Like it's awkward right now, right? We're awkward. We're on a camera. We're having fun, right? It's great connecting. But I'm not saying that I'm comfortable being uncomfortable to have a camera and a Zoom and all those things, right? So yeah.
Well, in medicine, we are trained to think that being uncomfortable is dangerous too, because uncomfortable means you
Oh,
don't know
tell me
what's next.
more.
Something's going to go wrong. So if you're
Oh,
uncomfortable, like in a patient care encounter, you're missing something, or if you're in the ICU and you're uncomfortable. And so I
right.
think for us, it turns on fight or flight even more so than others. And so I'm thinking that may be part of it, that discomfort, or even if you go
That's
back to our
interesting.
training, which for most of us is trauma,
Right, right, right,
right?
right.
If you were uncomfortable on rounds, like someone might figure out that you didn't know something, you
Yeah,
might
yeah, yeah.
make a mistake,
Yep.
or you might embarrass yourself, or be made fun of. There's a lot of shame culture in medicine. So for us,
Yeah.
I think the discomfort is just really scary. And so it becomes this whole story, which while you're on trying to give a talk at the same time. And so
Yeah.
that's actually where I think really connecting back to your body and bringing mindfulness
Yes.
into it, like expect the discomfort and
Yeah.
reminding yourself that you're going to feel it, but it's not the same as a patient coding and you feel uncomfortable or
Yeah.
not knowing what to do in a surgery or something like that. It's a different situation, and having those breathwork tools and having
Yes.
those mindfulness tools can be really, really powerful.
And because words create worlds, right? And that's not our phrase, that's an age-old phrase, right? So because words create worlds, I'm thinking, no, I want to change the world. I want to figure out if there's that interesting, because being uncomfortable is trained into like, you need to be aware, right? My feeling is like, is there some other way of phrasing that, or phrasing the discomfort, right?
Right.
Because I think that's a legitimate thing. Your body's trying to tell you something. So you're having a gut reaction, right? You're having a gut reaction to something. I'm aware of what's happening, is different than the discomfort I'm talking about, which is an awkward thing, right? So maybe awkward versus uncomfortable, even, right?
Yeah, awkward would work. The other thing that I find, just because I do a lot of coaching of physicians,
Yeah.
is we just need to understand that that's our default interpretation.
Oh, yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's relevant if you're in the ICU.
Yes.
That's relevant if you're in a code in the emergency room. But
Right.
so when I work with people who want to change careers, or they want to change jobs,
Yeah.
or they want to leave a marriage because it's not
Right.
working, but
Right.
they can't because it's
Right.
uncomfortable. And that means
Yeah.
it's dangerous. And so
Yeah.
it's actually being discerning about,
Hmm.
oh, it's fine to be uncomfortable on a stage. And when you're prepared for it and you're expecting it, and you're like, it
Yeah.
doesn't always mean that.
Right.
It's pausing in that moment and understanding what it means and expecting it. Then I think we can learn over time. And that's something that we actually really have to learn, is that we have all these default thought patterns. And I'm thinking some others that really get in the way of our public speaking. And I'm just going to throw them out here because I think
Yeah.
they'll be useful for you to comment on. But we think there's a right way to do things. We're trained that there's a right way and a wrong way.
Hmm.
We tend to be trained that fast is better, urgency is better, which does not make a better public speaker. That was
Right.
something I had to sort of, we're trained that more is better. So we want to put out all the information. We are trained to be perfectionists. It makes it hard to give a talk if you have to be perfect, right? So you're going to be judged if you're not perfect. We're trained not to be risk takers, but
Hmm.
being on stage takes a risk. So we're like, I don't want to do that.
Yeah.
And if we make a mistake, even, it's dangerous. And so putting yourself in that uncomfortable situation, as a speaker, I think people get very nervous about what the repercussions might be. Or what if I hear this a lot, what if someone misinterprets what I said and
Yeah.
they make it mean something, and then they say this. And so I think we tend to catastrophize about outcomes, and all of these things
Yeah.
get in our way, these default thought patterns. And
Yeah.
for me, at least in the coaching I do, is when we're aware of them, then they can help us make a change in our life, and or we
Sure.
can stop thinking them about our jobs and just enjoy the jobs we have. But I think they also, the more I've looked into, doing my own speaking and understanding where they come up and understanding how physicians think, I think they interfere with us giving engaging, inspiring talks if we're not aware of it.
Interesting. Lots of them, right? So
Yeah.
that sense of having to that there's a right way.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, coming from the arts world, so I'm an actor, trained as an actor, drama teacher, all of that. My first instinct is to first honor you and physicians for, yes, those are legitimate things that make you really good at your job. That's the first thing, right? It's like, okay, it makes sense that you want to there's a right way to do things and move it forward, because life and death.
Yeah.
We joke, and I guess there's some seriousness to it. That whole thing of like, what do people fear more, right? Being on stage and all of that, and judgment and all of that. I get that. And I understand that there's truth in that. And I'm hearing you even more, because I work with physicians all the time, is that sense of, it has a clarity with you speaking to it like this and this and this because of your experience, because you're in the
You're like,
sandbox
why did
trying
they think
everything
like
on,
this? This is
right? You're like,
right.
oh
Yeah.
my gosh.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's easy for me, I'm going to say, as a drama teacher, to go, yeah, it's not a right way. You have to figure out who you are. We're all individuals. We all come in different packaging, and how you connect with people, and that individuality is important. And what the art is bringing that individual self to it. That's so easy for me to walk through, like toss it out there. I don't want to do that right now. I want to go, wait a minute, let's honor. I'm like,
Yep.
yes. And honoring the fact of all the things you mentioned, right? There's an urgency, there's a right way, there's a perfection. We're judged if not. I always say the life or death. We're not taking risks. So with each one of those, is there a possibility, and this is what you've been doing, and the reframing, right? So we have different contexts, right? What's happening. And I think, well, I always say we create habits in order to succeed, not sabotage ourselves. So when we're learning new things, we want to thank ourselves, not beat ourselves up. So from my experience working with physicians, you're good at beating yourselves up.
We're exceptional at that, which also makes it hard to give a talk.
Totally, right? So we want to make
say,
sure.
I shouldn't have said that. And I should have done that this way. And why did I?
Yes. So if we are working on that idea of a reframe and being able to, if we're creating habits, we are creating new habits that are for a new set of circumstances. You will default to the habits that you studied and have been
practiced.
Yes, practiced for years, right? We were talking about these different words, right? So practice, right? And I'm an actor, so we don't like the word practice. We say rehearse. So we just, words. We're like all different.
We love the word practice. It's actually, I love that you said, I said you matched me with a coach. And you said, no, we casted you. And I was like, casted me? And then it's match is a doctor word and cast is a
we cast you. Yeah. We cast you. Mm-hmm. We cast you with the right coach. Yeah. So I really think that there is honor the fact that all of these things, the urgency, the discomfort, all of those things that you have moving quickly are really germane, important, vital, to use what I would think is a good physician word, vital for being a physician, being a doctor, right? What we want to check is that that is a different environment than when we are on the platform, when we are speaking. And it's even a little bit different when you're one-on-one with the patient, but I'm going to stay with speaking. So the idea is that so almost all of them are opposite.
Yeah.
So there isn't a right way.
What if there's lots of right ways?
That's what I'm saying. So there are many, many right ways. A much better way of saying it than there's not.
Good to me. I'm like, because I don't want you to say there's no wrong way, because I'm like, no, there is, right? That's what my brain says. But if there's lots of right ways,
there are many.
My way could be the right way, or your way. Like there's a right way.
Totally.
I feel very safe and comfortable with that.
And artful. So if there are variations on what's right, and the right has to be connected to you, right? Then that is incredibly freeing and playful in the creative way, right? Fast and urgency. There is an urgency to connect with an audience. It matters what you start with in order to make that connection right away. So that's not incorrect. We interpret it differently. And usually fast means we want to be careful that we're not speaking too quickly is how that's being interpreted. We can be fast speakers. I am, if we have micro pauses. So there are other things going on. We tend to think that fast speaking and how quickly we make sounds. Yes. But most people follow with the phrasing or the chunks that we're speaking in anyway. And if we're just speaking really quickly and everything's going together and we're only using our consonants and we're not having any breaks, it's really the micro pauses that make it easier to follow us. If we just link everything together and we're speaking quickly, no one can follow us, right? So for example, so it's still speaking quickly. So that urgency, and then more is better. That's I think that's a beautiful intent. And then you have to figure out, like when eating, right? More is more food, more options, all of that. And then we have to be discerning. What are we going to share in this moment? If it's a keynote or a breakout, do you have a half an hour? Do you have an hour? So then you're discerning, right? So more is better. Which pieces am I going to give? So I think it's a generous thought, not simply a physician thought that more is better. It's like, we want more information.
You've got to get more slides in there and more knowledge.
Yeah. But that's a beautiful sentiment. I want to share more information and more. I have all the knowledge. And then we're going to be discerning what we share. So I'm just and then perfectionism. Perfectionism, what does that mean? Like defining that will be the difference, right? So I would say that you have been giving perfect speeches because you've been coming and being present and being in that moment. You all as physicians, what perfect means, a perfect operation, a perfect diagnosis, a perfect whatever, like you have a different scale than what
I often say perfect is impossible. Perfection by definition is not.
There you go.
And so to me, we were trained with this perfectionist idea, but you can't do a perfect surgery. So I actually try to undo that thought.
Perfect.
That you give the best talk you can in the moment on that day with that audience, with that microphone that you might like, or that podium that you don't like, or the slide setup that you can't see, or whatever it is. It's really sort of practicing having our own back, which we were not taught. So we get to the end of the talk and it's like, I did this wrong. I should have done that. This didn't land right. That does not help you really become a better speaker, because you're beating yourself up. Instead of sort of noticing what did work, what might I like to tweak for next time?
So our phrase for that perfectionism, right, is connection over perfection, right? So we're looking for, are we connecting with the audience over whatever's perfect? That situation of going right in and doing the debrief on yourself and ripping it apart, that is not only for physicians, that is a lot of people. So the practice, and there are people really invite you to have that practice, you must celebrate before you deliberate, right? So how do you celebrate before you go back in? We do want to learn.
Yeah.
You have to take the celebration moment. And the phrasing that we use for looking at it when we're doing a retrospective or whatever we know, that debrief, that thing is what worked. What do you want more of, less of, or different? Because feed forward is different than feedback. Feedback sends us often into a spiral. And there are times to figure out what didn't work. What's really important, though, is holding on to what did work. I work with so many professionals who spend so much time getting feedback and then shifting what they're doing. And I just wrote about this because I said, you have to ask for what's working and what do I need more of, less of, or different. And I learned that from it's out there. And my dear colleague Barry is like, how do we have feed forward? Because that sense of how do I build on what's already working is essential. Otherwise, you keep scrapping and starting again, right? So you want to make sure you're going, oh, that worked and that worked and that worked. And for this audience, that worked. I'm not sure it'll work for the next audience. I need more of this. I need less of this. I need different. When we go, it's really easy to go, oh, this didn't work. This didn't work. This didn't work. And it feels often familiar. I was going to say good. Feels familiar to point out the problems. It is a discipline to celebrate and then say what worked. Really important. Yeah.
That's fantastic. And I think we often don't celebrate in medicine because we're like, oh, it's cocky to celebrate. Or like if you're busy celebrating, something bad might happen. We're very superstitious. So
yes.
I
actors.
actually spend a lot of time in my coaching celebrating what was better from last time, because we are experts at noticing what we haven't done yet, but what's better. So I wanted to pivot at the end here, talking about speaking as an art or as a creative endeavor, because I think as I was looking at the list and thinking about things we were just talking about, if it's a creative endeavor, it's less likely to have something be right or wrong. It's less likely to have to be perfect because creativity isn't really about perfection. So it might be a way around some of these tricky thoughts. People do take risks when they're doing creative things, if they're making art, for example, or so I'm wondering, well, the one thing that I'm not quite sure plays into that is imposter syndrome, but this might just be my own personal issue because I have imposter syndrome about not being creative. I grew up with a brother who's an extremely good artist and became an architect, and that's his natural thing. So I decided I wasn't creative growing up. I have recently learned that I am creative more in the podcasting yoga realm, and I do a lot of writing and my talks are creative, but I didn't understand that until recently. So this creativity actually for me triggers a bit of imposter syndrome, but that's just old stuff. And I'm not sure that would be true for other people. If we're a creative endeavor, we of course could show up uniquely, differently, have fun with it. Yet it might be a way out of some of these. Generally, we're not urgent and quick when we're creating something. We take our time, for example. And so we are much more accepting of mistakes or imperfection if you're creating pottery, for example. And so speaking about this as like an art form or a creative endeavor, I wonder if that's a way of giving people more room to explore and have fun with it.
You just dropped so many little things that I want to pick up on. I'm like, boop, 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 boop. So I'm like, oh, so I would love to think that art doesn't have right or wrong. I would love that. And I think in essence, it doesn't. Being an actor, you've been told you're right or wrong quite a bit, just so you know, whether you get cast or not, or those kinds of things. And people, their art is accepted or not accepted, and is that song correct? So we always we have opinions.
I have
People
a
have opinions to art, right?
thought about this, that if
Yeah.
you're in art, you think about this differently. But because
Yes.
those of us are in medicine, art is something different. So all of
Right.
our default thought patterns here wouldn't apply to art. But if you're in art, you have all those same default thought patterns
default
about art. I was like, oh my gosh. So it's actually making it something different than what you usually do. Isn't that fascinating?
And so we too in the art world are inviting in, and me as a coach and trainer and all of the things that I'm doing, right, with facilitating is the art for me is that flexibility in the moment of bringing the authentic self to connect and to be in that relationship. So yesterday I was working with a wonderful young business owner, and for her, in finding the art of the conversation, how does she bring her art to flex and move and tap into what needs to be in the moment? Because the art is the individuality of her and the person that she's speaking to. So that art, for me in this moment of speaking to you, I'll have a zillion thoughts right when we finish, right? And more thoughts, is that the art is, what am I deciding in the moment is the clearest way to connect all the content that I have and what I want to share from my heart and my gut and my head. How am I going to bring that together to be connected to that audience? So there is an art of pulling that together. And for me, it's that individuality. How do I bring it in my individual sense and be flexible? So the one reason that we invite people to explore improv, right, is improv is not about being funny. Improv is about a major discipline of practicing being in the moment, truly listening, and responding in relationship. So improv is not about comedy, right? That's not where we're going. What improv is about, and it's mostly what most of us do all day long, unless you wrote out what you were going to talk about all day long. We are in that flexible place, right? So that sense of the more we work on our content, the more we explore what we're going to do, the more we're able to be spontaneous in the moment. The quick analogy, if I'm a soccer player and I'm not, and I drill on all my little moves as a soccer player, right? Drill, drill, drill. Then in the game, I'm able to pull on everything, right? So that's the same with physicians, the same with speakers. I want to take a little side moment, just for a moment, and it may be a whole nother topic you and I will, have to have coffee over. Imposter syndrome, and I know it's one of those worlds you explore. I do invite a division between being insecure or questioning one's expertise around something and imposter syndrome. I feel like we use the term imposter syndrome to cover a whole collection of phrases like, I'm not as secure, I'm not as comfortable, I'm not as, and I feel like imposter syndrome is something very, very real. And so I invite us to be careful in how we, especially around creativity. Is it imposter
100%.
syndrome,
It's just
or is
a garbage bag term these days that everything is in there.
right? So it could be I'm not as familiar with being creative. I haven't practiced that. I haven't been in that sandbox in a while because I went this direction and I saw my creativity and my science as different. And I want to invite people to go, because there is imposter syndrome is a very real thing, right? I don't want to, I'm not dismissing that. I'm allowing us to go, you can have a discomfort with moving towards your creativity simply because your brother showed up differently with it, right? And it doesn't, and you might have imposter syndrome.
No,
that may be.
It's
also
the
maybe
language that's familiar.
Yeah,
It's like I feel
right. You're
uncomfortable, so
uncomfortable.
therefore I must be an imposter.
Yeah. Or you're a fabulous human being who's a little less comfortable in the creative realm because you watched your brother excel and he watched you excel in other.
And I think what I've learned more recently is I'm not comfortable in drawing in the pen on paper drawing realm, but my creativity is in just a different realm. And what I didn't understand, and it makes sense as a young kid you wouldn't, was there's all kinds of forms of creativity, but our brains have offered these things that we hold on to forever and ever. So
yes.
In kind of bringing this together, it strikes me that we have kind of identified that speaking is simple. I'm going to offer this because it's something
great
epiphany here.
Okay.
It's about connection and presence.
Yep.
And So, for all the physicians listening, we are exceptional at connection and presence. That's what we do all day.
Yay, I
It
love that.
doesn't have to be hard. It's just doing that in a different space and figuring out your tools to do it from either a Zoom box or on a stage rather than in an exam room. But we have all these tools. In fact, we think we weren't trained to give talks, but we were trained to talk to patients all the time, right?
Yes.
And we are trained to connect, and we have all these tools to connect, and many
Yes.
of them could be modified slightly, because I think if we come in with this idea that we're not good at it or we weren't trained to do it, then we have a lot more drama about doing it. And
Yes.
this is something that if it's about connection and presence, I'm like, oh, I'm good at those. So maybe I could just let go of all these stories and have a little more fun with, oh, well, if I'm just here to connect, what would help me connect? What helps me feel present? And yes, it's about a story, and yes, it's about what you're sharing. But if that's the heart of how one does it effectively, most of us have a meaningful message. We're just maybe need help and support, which we do. And I will say, from my experience, getting coached and have someone listen and pair it back to you, oh, so this is what you're trying to say, is so helpful.
Yes.
Because I didn't even know many of the things I was trying to say. I'm like, yes, that is what I'm trying to say. And it helped me say it much more clearly. So it's really helpful to have someone help you with that. But if you could start with the premise that as a speaker, we're connecting and showing up with connecting to ourselves and connecting to an audience and connecting to a message and being present in our bodies and being present with the people listening and present in this moment, which is what you now tell me acting is, which is so fascinating. Just floored by this. That we actually are really good at that. And if we could start feeling good at it, that's sort of like, then that's your launching pad for becoming an exceptional speaker.
Perfect. I actually have physicians sent to me who aren't good at connecting, right?
Yes.
So that's what I'm working with them on. Their communication isn't connecting in a way, right? So yes, yes to what you're saying. I think that I'm hearing some people out in your podcast land going, yeah, but standing in front of people. So I just want to remind people that yes. And the one thing we say, and there are lots of tools to learn from getting coached about how to show up. And I keep working. I get coached too. I speak all the time and I'm getting coached and I'm working on being better and better. The one thing that we'll say is you are being judged. Absolutely. You're standing up in front of people, like to pretend we're not. That mean that people aren't human beings. Human beings are always judging what's going on and whether it's safe or not. And so you just go, they are. Of course they are. So would I. You know what you're wearing, what's going on. Then if you make sure that your objective, that's an actor term, your objective to connect with the audience, share information, your goal, your action, your objective is stronger than the self-consciousness, that's where you go forward. I want to connect. I want to share this message. What's my action? What's my objective? That is more powerful than getting caught up in the fact that people are probably looking at me. They are looking at you and they are judging you.
Objective is a doctor term too.
Oh, good. Okay.
Because when we give CME talks, they have objectives.
And
this is the learning objectives.
Yeah.
But I would take it to the mindfulness world, which could be objectives, but it could be your intention. And so I actually often use that. So what's my intention here is to share a powerful tool or to, my talk that I'm giving a lot of now, I talk about my intention is to inspire and provide hope to physicians. So if that's my intention, that's the energy with which you show up with. And that's also your objective. So we are used to writing objectives, but I think maybe one bit of advice I would say for doctors is add an objective that's yours at the end. That's not the CME objective, but what's your objective? I'm usually pretty good at, these are the things we have to do to get the talk paid for or to get people credit for the talk. But what's the real objective of the talk? And connecting what's your intention could be really, a powerful way of thinking about that. And I want to comment on this judgment piece because I think it's really helpful. We really want to avoid judgment. So your idea that we're going to be judged is really helpful. And I have actually used this a lot now when we're making a decision. 30% of the people will love what you do. 30% won't even notice. 30% won't like it. And maybe you're going to influence 10%. And so when I kind of approach it that way,
Yes.
like you might as well do what you want. Now, I'm thinking that doesn't totally apply on the stage, because I feel like if I'm invited to give a talk, I want more than 30% of people to like
Yeah.
it. But there's no way that 100% of the people are going to like it.
Nope.
And so I actually work with a non-speaking coach also.
Yeah. Yeah.
um, and she often, we often talk about this idea that you're there, the people out there, you're just there to connect with. There's 5 people in the audience who are really going to benefit from your message. It's worthwhile being there. And
Yeah.
so that kind of gets you out of the percents. But I think kind of thinking about it in those ways, we're so sensitive to judgment in medicine, because if we are judged, someone thinks we did something wrong. First of all, they might sue us, or we
Yeah.
might not get a residency or a fellowship.
Yeah.
We might not, if we get a patient complaint, we have to then explain what happened and go in
Go
front
to
of
me.
the board. And, it's very scary to be
Get
judged.
coaching. Yes.
And
Exactly.
get coaching because we don't communicate right. So I think just realizing that we have this intense fear of judgment, and yet we're putting ourselves. So I'm trying to figure out, is it the language, or is it, I think for me, it's kind of funny. It's like, well, of course you're going to be judged. That's what people,
Of course we are.
I judge people on the stage. They shouldn't have said that, or they should have said this, but maybe it doesn't mean what we think. So it's that discerning bit.
Yeah.
It's also just sort of, you're not there for everyone to love you. You're there for 5 people to enjoy what you said. And that's a lot less pressure.
Yeah. And Robin, who co-owns the Articulate, and she always affirms the word aspiration. What's your aspiration? Which I love that term. Like, I have my objectives because I'm an actor. I've been trained with objectives, right? Objectives and what's my intention. And that aspiration is that high dream, right? Also from that sense of that's even bigger. It has a bigger heart to it, right? What's your aspiration? And we may not ever hit it, but it does give us a forward movement and a connection.
I love
right?
it.
Yeah.
In yoga, I'm a kids yoga teacher also.
Yeah.
And we talk about kids don't know what intentions are. So when you're talking about a class, it's your aspiration, which they actually probably don't know what that is either, or their wish is where it is the
their
next
wish
level. And so it's
their
what's your
wish.
wish for the talk? It makes it even lighter.
I love
How
it.
beautiful.
What's your wish? Yeah.
Thank you so much for joining me. This was super fun. Is there any last message you want to send out to folks about either how to give a great talk, or why they should get coaching, or want to get coaching is usually the word I use to help them show up more impactfully or meaningfully?
2 quick things. One is the world needs your voice. I am committed to individual voices being heard. We need your voice. Someone needs your voice. So risking that. And I think coaching is helpful everywhere. We need each other. We need feedback. We need the support. And I think one of the key things is that coaches always have coaches, right? That's because coaches realize they need that. And in finding someone to work with you on your speaking, and that is someone who affirms you and helps you pull away all the trappings that the world has draped over you so that you can show up in your amazing individuality and essence to share that voice. And that's what fires me up every day. Yes.
And I think the world really needs physician voices. We were sort of taught to hide and to just be humble and be in the background and serve. And yet we have these beautiful, powerful, really needed voices in the world today. And so I love this thought that the world needs your voice.
Yes.
And coaching is this ongoing thing. And as I said, I've done 1 round and I have a whole new plan of what I want to work on next.
Yes.
But I think this idea that it's not, you don't get coaching because you're not good at something. You get coaching because you want to be better, or you want to grow a skill, or you want to learn how to share or shine. And that it's not a one and done thing. It's really an investment. And it doesn't mean you have to do it all the time, every minute, but sequentially sort of figuring out, where do I want to grow? And so if speaking is an area that you want to grow, and I might even say not just speaking, but communicating effectively and influentially, which is what speaking is. But there are lots of the tools apply to your writing. They apply to all the ways in which you communicate to people, that it is one of the things that I think many of us in medicine, you only got coaching if you were bad at communicating or bad at speaking or,
Yes.
were deficient in some way. And yet it is, for
Yes.
me, has been such an incredible tool. And what I see what you do at Articulate is really allow people to show up with a voice and
Yeah.
making a meaningful impact. And who doesn't want to do that with our time on this earth, as short as it is?
Why do athletes know that coaching is good?
Yeah.
Right? When the rest of like athletes always have coaches to be better and better, right?
Yeah.
And yes to everything you just said. And I'm like, let's take that. Let's take a page out of their book and go, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
And they
It's
have coaches for everything, not just the sports. They have sleep and eating and mindset and mindfulness and
totally.
everything. Speaking
Yes.
probably too, right?
Yes,
And
yes.
and
I
and so
yes.
to realize, I think that we can get this guidance in all different realms. Whatever
Hmm.
what realm you would like to grow in, it's a
Yeah.
magic way of moving forward in your life.
Yes.
Thank
Humans
you.
helping humans. Yes.
Yeah.
I love it.
Thank you so much for joining me. It was super fun.
Oh,
And
I love what you're doing. I love how you've created this amazing platform and voice that you're sharing, right? Between the yoga and as a physician and as a human being and you're elevating other voices. So thank you for that.
thank you for your inspiration. I would say those many years ago, because it's not something I had thought about at all. So
It's great. Thank you.
beautiful. And we shall connect again, I'm certain, at another conference.
Yeah.
And anyone who is listening who wants to check out Hilary's work and Articulate and learn more about speaking, I will put the links and her bio and more information in the show notes so you can find everything that you need there.
Yay.
Thanks for listening.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for joining us.
We encourage you to dive into the show notes for each episode for more learnings and resources.
We also invite you to take a listen to the many other Mindful Healers podcast episodes. And please share the podcast far and wide with colleagues, friends, and family.
If our message and approach resonate with you, we would love to work with you.
When you listen to a podcast, you consume information, but when you work with us, you can actually practice and change.
We offer coaching and mindfulness experiences, talks, workshops, retreats, and more. Connect with us at themindfulhealerspodcast.com.
The content of this podcast is not medical or life advice. We invite you to participate in the mindful moments we offer at the end of most of our podcasts, but please only do so safely.